Okay, so now that we did the basic tones, let's go into the vibrance and saturation and clarity, okay? And texture and dehaze and this whole section called presence, okay? All right, so let's first talk about saturation because it's the most easiest concept to understand. You see, a color can be more or less vivid. So if I move my saturation slider to the right, every color becomes more vivid. If I move them to the left, every color becomes less vivid, more towards black and white. Very colorful, black and white. Very colorful, black and white. You got it. Simple. Vibrance is kind of the same idea, except that the software is going to look at, okay, what colors needs to be boosted, made more vivid, and which one I should not touch. So if I move this to the right, it is going to give a more natural result. It can give, if I go all the way, you see it's very crazy vivid, but not as crazy vivid if I move all of that all the way. Okay, so it's kind of saturation with intelligence. Same idea, if you go to the left, it's going to desaturate, but you see it's keeping more of the reds. It does it like with intelligence, basically. That's the whole idea. Okay, now texture is something new that came recently, so I'm going to zoom in so you can see. And what texture does, as you would imagine, it makes the texture awesome. So check this out. If I move this to the right, all the way, I mean, the textures are going to be crazy, but the clouds now are very noisy. I mean, I shot this, maybe I shot this with, 100 ISO, but it's just too crazy. So just be gentle with it. Don't use it everywhere. So that's kind of cool, but I'll show you in a later video how we can get rid of the noise. So that's what it is. Texture is going to make the texture just more sharp, more in your face. Clarity is kind of the same thing. Let me show you in the raw photo, but it does what we call middle contrast. It's kind of like, okay, to make it simple, it adds contrast and takes out saturation. And it gives like a specific look that really screams retouching. So clarity, let me show you what it does if I push it all the way. So the photo is got more contrast, it's got more sharpness, and it's got less saturation. That's what clarity does on the right side. And on the left side, it makes everything like very diffused and very, just like if you had put some kind of like, I don't know, some kind of wax over your lens or something, it's every, like very diffused. Okay, dehaze. Well, dehaze is supposed to dehaze. So what it really does, it really makes the contrast strong and it really makes the color strong. Check this out. If I use dehaze, look at this. So dehaze is probably the most powerful slider in terms of like when you push on it, it does something really important to your photo. So you can use a little bit of dehaze. And what that's going to do is add contrast and basically contrast sharpening. And it's going to add also some saturation. But you can go the other way. You can add some A's. Now, tip number one. These three sliders, I very, very rarely use them globally on the photo. You will see later on there is amazing local tools here, gradients, radial, and brush, where you can use these tools onto, and it's a much more professional result. But I have a default setting that I do, just to say the opposite of what I just said, is you can add a bit of texture like +20 and take out a little bit of clarity. Because when you do this workflow that I did of opening up the shadows 100%, bring down, sometimes you get a little bit of an illustrative look. It looks like a bit of a drawing. We call this like the HDR look. So by doing a bit of minus clarity, like -10, -12, and adding a bit of texture, I find it sort of like fine touches that look, okay? So I repeat, texture is gonna make your texture look much more awesome. Clarity is gonna add a lot of contrast and desaturate your photo. And dehaze is gonna make your photo much more contrasty. I can add a bit of dehaze if you want to, just for the fun of it, to make it really pop. I can add a bit of saturation on this photo because I like that. And voila, and let's see the before and after, where we are now. Before, after, ways to go. It's already looking much better. So that is what the present section of this panel is.